Hello, 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 hello. It's good to see you. Say hello.
Welcome to the Huskies Hockey Podcast. Weldie and Andrew recapping another week of Husky hockey action. It's been a time. It's I don't even know where to begin with this, but it's quite the topsy-turvy collapse for the men. The women end up getting 4 points, but I don't know. It's kind of an interesting weekend when it goes there, and we'll have a whole show to talk about it. But obviously, Andrew, everyone wants to know. Everybody's been clamoring for me to talk about the next whiskey of the week.
It's catching on.
Yeah, and I just came up with whiskey of the week. I got the alliteration there, which is different than
we didn't workshop this. So yeah, this is good so far. Keep going. You don't need me.
Yeah, exactly. So this is
where are we drinking?
Nearly the only joy that that some of this brings. Of talking Husky hockey as of late, especially on the men's side. Women's side, women as okay. Sorry, I just had my first on the nose of that. This is Canada is the answer to your question that you asked. But
I'm familiar with Canadian whiskey.
Right?
Turn out.
It thinks, but this has got a strong peaty smell to it. I would have not said this was Canadian. I would have said this was Scotch. I thought this was Scotch.
Peat moss in Canada, I don't believe.
Yeah. And again, I forgot what the name of it was. It's
then again, botany was not my major in college. Maybe they make like peat out of maple leaves. Canadian peat. Canadian Pete's, that sounds like an SCTV skit from way back in the day starring Eugene Levy. But don't let me talk over the bit here. SCTV was Canadian SNL. So it was like a sketch show, but
I thought kids. I thought that was Kids in the Hall.
This would have been like before that even, like 80s, early
really?
80s. Eugene Levy, Catherine O'Hara, like all those Canadian.
Have they always been together doing stuff?
Pretty much. I think Martin Short might have gotten his start there. It was, for Canada, very good, actually.
For Canada, just put that little caveat in there. I mean, as far as Canadian television goes.
Well, especially in the early 80s, Canadian tax shelter production took on a certain connotation in movie making, as you'd make these, they just looked cheap. And a lot of it was if they were trying to rip off New York, like if their movie was set in New York and they'd shoot it in Toronto.
Sure.
Just Toronto does not look like New York when it comes to like a film production. So it became a shorthand for cheap kind of low rent production if it was shot in Canada. That's obviously better now, but in those days, the SCTV days, early 80s, for that to hold up as much as it did, because I checked that out maybe 5-10 years ago, and it holds up pretty well. So it is good.
If we want to bring it back to USA, Characters Welcome, Psych, a lot of their episodes are filmed in British Columbia, which is kind of funny because it's set in Santa Barbara, California, and those two climates vastly different from each other.
Yes, I would assume that West Coast is easier to spoof, and of course nowadays it's better. In 1982, not so much.
Not so much. Sure enough. So, all right, let's take a swig of this. See if it tastes like Scotch. I'm kind of interested in this.
Knocks it back. Ooh, tickled the nose there a little bit.
I like it. It's a little nothing up front. It's not as powerful of a peaty taste as it is a peaty smell. Which saying peaty makes me think of Petey Pablo, which if you are of a certain age, you would remember Petey Pablo as the guy who takes your shirt off, twists it around your head, spins it like a helicopter.
Okay.
So
that one is not ringing a bell. That's
Ooh.
the
North Carolina, come on and raise up, take your shirt off, twist it around your head, spin it like a helicopter.
I would know that if when you said take your shirt off. I feel like that would have rung a bell. But alas,
it has not. I'm going to give this a 7-8.
You got to keep a spreadsheet going because I feel like that's towards the high end. I feel like we've had one that's broken 8.
Yes.
So this
and
is not.
I can't remember if that was the Danish one or the Peruvian one.
I think it was Germany.
Was it Germany?
I think Germany had.
I'll go back. Get a spreadsheet.
I'll
for
go
a
back
guy who has the pairwise spreadsheet and tracks like the movement of all the teams, you'd think I would make a spreadsheet for this.
And someone like me who's for like 3 years said that I'm going to make a spreadsheet with all of our POWs to track them and to like tally them up at the end of the year, and I've never done that. And then every time we have to do our receipts episode for when we pick the standings at the beginning of the year, I have to manually go back and listen to that episode instead of putting it down on a spreadsheet. I should have learned by now.
Well, we've got Riverside now. We've got like a rough transcript. So
we do.
Now I can just hit the transcript and
probably saved me about an hour and a half of listening. So thank you.
I saved you about 2/3 of a normal podcast length.
Yeah, the hour and a half was just the segment of us picking the standings.
Sure enough. All right, let's talk some hockey. You know what? I want to talk about something good. So let's start with the women.
That's good. So that's fine by me.
Switching up, women going to kind of a pesky Mankato team, who is able to, you kind of snake bite some teams and kind of surprise them every now and then, give them some good games. They had their own little losing streak as well in January, more successful than the Huskies men's team. But, I see a lot of good things out of that Mankato team, but St. Cloud was able to be victorious there on Friday, 3-1 with 2 third period goals, one by Marie Moran and then Alice Sorial there about 6.5 minutes or so into the third period. Huskies able to hold on in that one on Friday. Saturday, a little bit of a different story, where 2-2 tie ends up, but Minnesota State ends up going 5 rounds in a shootout and ends up getting the extra point. So 4 points on the weekend for the women's team. And, they're sitting right now at the pairwise, sitting at 11, I believe last time I checked, but 11, 10, and 9 are all separated by a fraction of an eyelash. So they're, with us having Minnesota and Ohio State on the docket here to close out the season, there's going to be some room or, chances for us to kind of move up and maybe kind of squeak in here. It's going to be a little bit of a long shot. We might have to have a good showing in the final face-off. We'll see where everything falls. But as far as this weekend here for the Huskies, how'd you think the games went?
Yeah, like I said, I was a little bit worried. I mean, Mankato played them well in that series at St. Cloud in November, taking 4 out of 6 points that weekend. Mankato, as we mentioned, hadn't been playing their best hockey of late. Mostly a tough schedule, but even dropping a game to like Bemidji the week before. You were confident that you took a sweep here in this series for the Huskies. I would love it, but I was like, I don't know, Mankato's decent. I thought St. Cloud played pretty well this weekend. Obviously, you'd like to have gotten the 2 wins, but having to come back on the Saturday game, tied in the third period with a Farrell goal, and salvaging a tie keeps you in contention, let's say. Losing that game, again, we don't have the benefit of having a customizer here, but feel like that would have knocked you down. I mean, you mentioned the separation between 11 and 9 is razor thin.
And then I'm sorry, I don't have that in front of me at the second. That's Quinnipiac and St. Lawrence?
Quinnipiac at 9, Clarkson at 10, and St. Cloud at 11. St. Lawrence had a good weekend. They bumped up to 7.
That's
Penn
right.
State dropped 1. They lost their first conference game of the year, and their first game in a while, so they dropped down to 8. Quinnipiac, that's I think the team that we really should focus on, and Clarkson to a lesser degree. They're right. They're both right there. It's difficult because they might meet in the playoffs. We'll get to those implications a little bit, but even if you weren't able to, I was going to say the margin between those 3 teams, Quinnipiac, Clarkson, and St. Cloud, is very thin, but it's pretty small, from St. Cloud at 11 to BU at 12. So I'm just thinking a loss to Mankato in regulation could have dropped you down a spot. So they avoided that situation. And now coming into games, the last 2 series of the regular season against number 3 team in pairwise with Minnesota, and then the number 2 team in pairwise with Ohio State, you have an opportunity in front of you where I think if you can split these 2 series, which is a very tall task, that might be enough to at least bump you up into the 9th territory, which is the cut line right now, is 9th. Which is, again, something that we will be talking more about the men's collapse with the women's team, especially after that series at Duluth to start the second half. I can't remember. Maybe I'll have to go back and read the transcript on this. I feel like I said under 1% chance for St. Cloud to make the tournament at that point. It's certainly higher than that. I don't know if I'd put it at more than 10 or 20% because of what you're going to have to need to do. Like I said, split the next 2 series and then at least take a game in the playoff series, if not win that playoff series. It might be required to win a playoff series against Duluth.
And that's a house of horrors up there at Amsoil.
So, and then probably also hoping for some help from teams like Quinnipiac and Clarkson if they can lose as well. So, I mean, there's a lot of factors that still make this a long shot. But the fact that they've been able to, especially in contrast to last season's second half, where it was similar in a lot of road-heavy schedule in the second half of both these last 2 seasons. And last year you had the gauntlet, you had the top 4 teams playing back-to-back to end the season. And it became a point where it was just too much for the team to handle. Coming down the stretch, you've got the whole wear and tear of the season, and then on top of that, you've got to fight for your playoff lives against, arguably the 4 best teams in the country. Not many teams are going to come out of that unscathed or in a better position than they were going into it, let's say. This year, the schedule hasn't been as difficult. You've made your moves here to get back into relevance by taking care of business, relatively speaking, by sweeping Vigi, take majority of the points against St. Thomas, doing the same against Mankato. But again, in the Saturday game where you had to come back in the third period to salvage a tie, you had to do the same against Wisconsin. Best team in the country, maybe best team in this decade. Had to do the same there, come back in third period on the road to get that game into overtime and then in the books as a tie, which might be your best result of any game this year. This team has shown a lot of moxie, a lot of drive, a lot of grit. You know me, I love me some gritty St. Cloud.
Some grittiness.
That Farrell goal, I tweeted out, she is the queen of the greasy goal. And this is another tip in none of her goals, at least this year, are going to make the highlight reel. But doesn't matter. how splashy they are as long as they get in the back of the net. The Mankato goaltender she got the start on Saturday, the first time that St. Cloud had seen her, Jessie McPherson. She was kind of stingy there for the majority of that game. St. Cloud was generating a lot of good chances, the better chances of the two teams. And it was frustrating that it was just 2-1 at that point. But again, averted disaster. I don't really care about the shootout result. I don't even think Idalski cared either. Sidney Bryant started it out, and Siri Urela was the second shooter who scored. He's the only scorer for St. Cloud.
I mean, yeah, that's true.
But it's conference points are it doesn't really matter at this point.
It doesn't matter at this point.
The pairwise is what counts. So 4 points. Yes, you'd love to have seen a 6-point weekend. You could have said the same thing last weekend against St. Thomas, but it really comes down to these next 2 weekends. And I think the team is at least, we're going to talk about Duluth here, potentially maybe seeing them in the playoffs. Duluth, yes, they got off the mat sweeping Bemidji this weekend, but every team basically has done that this year. Duluth, other than that, has been playing their worst hockey of the year coming down the stretch. St. Cloud seemingly might be playing some of their best hockey down the stretch. So even if we are destined to meet them in the playoffs, maybe the vibes are going St. Cloud's direction a little bit. Obviously, we got to focus on these next 2 series, and specifically the Gopher series coming up. But I liked what I saw. Road series in this conference is never easy, and I think Mankato's decent. So being able to take majority of the points on the road, I thought was good, if not fantastic, outcome for this team.
Yeah, I found it, interesting that, we're looking at Friday's game. Mankato ends up capitalizing on the power play, their only goal on Friday, only power play chance, ended up scoring on it. That ties it up, and you're just kind of like, I don't know how you felt, but I was just like, even a little bit that whole second period, I was just like, doesn't really feel like this is really going the Huskies' way. But, Marie Moran, only her second goal of the season. Her other goal came, I think, against like Lindenwood or Mercyhurst.
First weekend of the year. Yeah, first weekend of the year.
So a heck of a time for her to kind of step up about 2 minutes in. And after that, I was like, okay, I think we're going to be good. I thought Kariko was playing well, as she has done pretty much all season. Not a lot of shots overall generated in the game, but then Soriel, making plays as she does, and ends up icing that game. But then kind of switching gears over to Saturday, I thought it was more of a kind of a run and gun type of game. There was a lot more, generated chances, but like you said, like McPherson, I thought, very stingy in goal. And it was just kind of a weird second period. All the penalties were in the second period, and it felt like the game just kind of dragged. And I think maybe that's a little bit with the shot selection, or, the shots being elevated in that. So it was just kind of a weird balance, I think, of, it was a little more exciting at times, but then the refs really wanted to make a point there that second period. And then especially with that, late in the second, that kerfuffle with the high sticking 5-minute major on Juliana Gazdick. And then 2 Huskies get penalties with Soriel and Sunderland.
Natural clown hockey there, 3-on-3 without it being forced upon the teams. It was just based on penalties. You don't see that too often.
So it was just a weird kind of calamity there at the end. But, coming in, Huskies end up getting, to full strength in a couple minutes on the power play into the third. So I thought, okay, here's the chance to kind of get back going here for the third. Ended up not converting on it, but a couple minutes later, like you said, Avery Farrell with the grimy goal, ends up being right place, right time, getting it in, and able to hold on. St. Cloud, better opportunities there in overtime, but not able to kind of get it done. So, but it was, yeah, it's, I don't know about their best hockey, but I do feel, I do feel they're very cohesive when it comes to the teamwork aspect of it. I feel their shots and their shot selection is maybe a little bit something to be desired, and that's something, I think I've been talking about, kind of ad nauseum about it. But it's something that I think that we're just kind of missing key opportunities, maybe trying to pick corners a little bit too much versus just trying to, hard and low and create those, second or third chances. Cause I think positionally we're sound enough to get those rebounds and second chances. But I think maybe trying to be a little bit too selective in our shot chances, or, in our trying to snipe it instead of, just trying to shoot to create more chances. I don't know. Maybe that's just me, and I'm overthinking it a little bit too much, but it's something that I think that if we're able to kind of create a little bit more chaos, I think we've got, the physical bodies as well as, kind of the smarts to play that positional sound, bad in rebounds, greasy goals type, we'd be able to kind of get some separation there. But and in the end, I was happy to see the team play as as well as they did. A little bit bummer that they weren't able to sweep, but we're in good position right now, and catching a Gopher team that's kind of reeling, as well as they've had. They got beat pretty soundly by the Badgers, so they might come ticked off here for the home and home series, but it'll be a good test to see where they're at. They had a really fun series earlier this year, so I'm happy to see that kind of come back and really show not only the WCHA but the NCAA that this is a team that belongs on the national tournament stage.
Yeah, I agree. Did you watch? I had a strange feeling because on Saturday, I kept seeing Jeff Geeson behind the bench there, and they announced that Dickerman, the head coach for Mankato, was out. I don't know if that was the same on Friday. I was only watching the game on mute and not fully paying attention 100% of the time. So I don't know if he was coaching both of these games, but especially as the game was progressing into the third period with them leading and seeing him there, I'm just like, I don't know if this is a bad sign that Geeson is going to Geeson us this game. But
I think it'd be fitting, actually. I think it'd be almost poetic.
St. Cloud had to overcome that aspect of it. And you mentioned that period in the second, the late second period where he had that long review and sorting out of the penalties. Right before that, there was St. Cloud had challenged for a potential goal that they ended up reviewing. So the game just ground to a halt there.
Yeah.
And that can be tough to keep your focus there because the game just stopped dead for about 10 minutes between all of those reviews. And yeah, I think Mankato's pesky. And this one was a series where it wasn't going to be easy. Especially with St. Cloud's offense, the way it is, they're not going to be blowing out anybody. So it made that 5-goal outburst against St. Thomas so refreshing, just because we haven't seen it in a while. So yeah, it kind of held serve. Again, you'd love to have seen the sweep, but I saw enough that I liked in this weekend, particular defense and goaltending, that does give me some hope. I don't know if you have a POW for this weekend, but I did want to mention my POW would be Dale Ross. I've been really impressed with her throughout the season and just her career that I've, in the last 2 years in particular, that I've been able to watch her on a game by game basis. We're going to miss her. She's a rock on that blue line, and it's not easy to replace that kind of player. She's not just a defensive player as well. She is assertive. Didn't have any points this weekend, but she was noticeable on the ice throughout the play. I just feel like she's one of, if not the best all-around player that St. Cloud has. And this one was a weekend where I definitely took notice and appreciated her play. Do you got a Paul?
I do, but I do want to really echo Dale Ross's play, because I think out of anybody for the Huskies, I am the most comfortable with her on the ice. And it could be because I've put Grace Wolf maybe on a little bit of a pedestal before her injury last year, and I was excited to her come back. But the poise that she has when she has the puck, and her ability to, and it's just kind of a calming influence back there, that I'm not used to seeing from the women's team. And just to see her, make plays, and to generate, not only generate chances, but to also disrupt a lot of other teams' plays, and get up and down the ice, and her skating. It's really, really phenomenal to watch. And I think I talked about it when I was talking about being at that ice level when I am behind the net, just watching her skating, and how much I've taken notice of it this year versus last year. And it may be because of all of the tough learning that she had to do last year with all the injuries on defense, and really elevated her game this year. But I totally agree. And that she's been a heck of a force there on the back end, and just really a joy to watch. So I do agree that is a good chance. I did go a little more stereotypical with it, that I did pick Emma Gentry, anytime, able to generate a goal and assist on the weekend, but also, generating that play on the game-winning goal on Saturday, to really get that, in line for Farrell to end up putting it in. I think she's going to be my pal. So a little more stereotypical with that, but I really do like your your Dale Ross pick.
Two good picks, I think.
Yeah. So, as we kind of get ready for the Gophers, I still think this is a Gophers team that is one of the worst Gophers teams in recent memories, which is, obviously saying a lot considering how great of a program that it historically has been. But as I've always been saying, I think if you slow down Abby Murphy and get into her head, I think you can, your game can kind of turn into your favor. And then if you have a Dale Ross up against Abby Murphy, or Soriel up against Abby Murphy, I think there's, you can do what you can to shut her down. And eventually I think you're going to get a good opportunity to get some points and get some pairwise cred this weekend.
Let's hope. I mean, obviously we'd like to see at least a redo of last series with the Gophers, which we were discussing before the show. It's a bit of a schedule quirk. Usually when they do these home and homes, they flip-flop the days of the home game. So, Gophers had the Friday game and Huskies had the Saturday game back in their series in November, so you'd figure it would have been flip-flopped. But no, they must have arranged it that says, no, St. Cloud can have the home game on Saturdays for both of those series, because we got Ritter on Friday and the Herb on Saturday. And so even better, let's just win on Saturday, just like we did in November then. Hey, let's win at Ritter as well while we're at it. It is, I mean, I would agree. It's saying that they're the worst team is a little strong, because they get
a little bit
third in pairwise. It's not like they're a team that's struggling here to win games, but just relatively speaking. Yeah, relatively speaking, it's true.
3-game losing streak and giving up 7, 8, and 6 goals those 3 games.
And yes, it's Ohio State and Wisconsin. Big caveat there. These are very good teams. But
Wisconsin was
goaltending-
so banged up that they had to put Layla Edwards on defense and still put up 6 points on them.
It's kind of goes to somewhat of my theory with Wisconsin that they kind of save their energy against lesser teams, and they expend that saved up energy for the marquee games, like against Ohio State and the Gophers, when they really need that. For them to put on,
it's kind of like a
spanking they
boss
did.
in an RPG where if they have like a powering up turn, and then they power up and then they unleash their powerful attack against the powerful teams.
It's a video game reference that I can get, that I understand. So this is good. This is good. And you wonder if the Gophers are going to be extra motivated to get off the mat based on the 3 game skid, where they've really been humbled at the hands of the WCHA's true elite, at least over the last 2 or 3 years. It's just weird to have Minnesota in this situation where they're third pony to these 2 teams, who I at least put on the record, and I think I try to prod you into joining me, that it's going to be another Ohio State-Wisconsin natty title game. Seemingly that's what it's pointing towards. If that's the case, the Gophers showed us why in these last 2 weekends with, yes, they did beat the Buckeyes in that first game in their series last week, but then the 7-3 drubbing, and then these 2 games at Laban weren't incredibly competitive from the Gopher standpoint. But it's obviously a team that we're well familiar with, the usual suspects, Murphy in particular. It seems like when they've struggled this year, the goaltending has been very kind of hot and cold. Skylar Vetter, Eddie's daughter, kind of lost the job earlier in the season. She had been a multi-year starter, but it's been mostly Hannah Clark's gig through this year. And that's who St. Cloud saw in both the games in November. And again, she's been pretty good in a lot of games, but these last 3 games, she's been in the net, at least started those games. She got yanked in the first game against Wisconsin, but presuming that she's going to be the starter that St. Cloud sees at least on the Friday game, and probably for both games here this weekend. And again, it's an inconsistency that I'm sure Gopher fans have been frustrated with, at least the performances she's put in when she's facing those elite teams. She's been pretty good against the non-elite teams, and against a team like St. Cloud, it's kind of in the middle between those 2 categories, 1-1 this year. So, again, I'm not going to say that I'm not going to put the word worst when I'm talking about the Gopher women's team, but relatively speaking, this is a team that can be beat, especially away from Ritter. So it feels like if you're the one using worst when describing this team, are you going to go ahead and call a split this weekend?
Yeah,
or
I'll
even
call
better.
A split. No, I won't go better. I would love to go better. But yeah, I'll call a split this weekend.
I've got a good feeling about it too.
Yeah. I am wondering if I should make my Abby Murphy as a diver sign, if I should bring that over and put that little bit of a callback as I screamed that she was a diver there at the Herb in front of the scratch players for the Minnesota. I got into a little bit of a cheering match between.
Do that again. Rile up the scratches.
Rile up the scratches.
Get something started.
Not like a 40-year-old man just heckling college women athletes.
That's right. That's very mature, I think.
Exactly. But also, don't be a diver, Abby. You're a better player than that. As she obviously listens to this podcast, it is taking
How is
notes.
she doing? She was with penalty minutes. Yeah, she's only got 51 this year.
God,
It's a far cry from the 118 she took last year. 66 penalty minutes. I'm sorry. I think CHN. Yeah, I was looking at the wrong. She's got 51 points, which is the other shoe when we're talking about Murphy. She does rack up the penalty minutes, but it comes at the cost of one of the nation's top scorers as well. She's a unique player. I'm not going to say I'm going to be sad to see her go, but the player type you don't see too often in the women's game. And so, but she has been more behaved this year. relatively speaking. That top line for them is a good one. You got Uber. This Milankova has been pretty good. They got her from Vermont in the portal over the offseason. She's put up a 28-point season so far. Buvang, saw her last year. So I mean, they got some talent up front. They got offensive weapons that St. Cloud, at least in quantity, don't have. But I think defensively, and particularly in net, we saw Ahola really play well against the Gophers in November. So I'd like to see her, especially, you got to think she's going to get that Saturday home game being sort of their senior night.
For senior night.
And with her success against the Gophers here, you got to feel like she's going to get that start at least in perhaps both games. I can't remember. Did Carrico get a game at Ritter? I think that was both Ahola. But let me just double check. No, Carrico did get the Ritter game. So we might see the same there, or I wouldn't be surprised if Ahola gets both. I guess we'll see here how that plays out. But yeah, I'm excited. Again, we're getting late season relevant action from the women's Huskies, which is not what we can really say with the men's side. So that makes me more excited for these games, because this, as Husky hockey fans, this is really what we got to hang our hat on at this point in the season.
No, it's so let's rip that Band-Aid off. As I don't know what your favorite Led Zeppelin song is, but the song remains the same. Maybe
you didn't give me a chance to brainstorm there, because I'm like, again, I like Stairway to Heaven, but I don't know where exactly you're going, if they have like a free fall type title there, but that's a good one. Song remains the same.
I mean, it's a little bit of a deeper cut and a little bit of a stretch. So I didn't. So I apologize. I didn't give you a chance to guess, but yeah,
this is what we get when we don't workshop our bits before the show.
No, but I don't know if it's worth it for the men's team. I don't know if they get if they get the honor of having us talk about them in the workshopping session. So this is, if they're gonna have weekends like this, then this is what we're gonna do for the podcast.
And to think, I was the one that went out and said, "Hey, I got a good hunch. I think St. Cloud's gonna win this weekend." Yeah, it's not based on any logic. It's all based on dumb luck, and they're probably gonna get smoked. I should have just gone with the head there, not the heart, I suppose. Because I think you'd probably classify 4-rip and 6-1 as a butt kicking, and not neither of those being wins for St. Cloud. I should stipulate.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know if it's a new low, because like everything just gets lower and lower, but I think you tweeted it out. But a fourth line hat trick.
It's got to that point this season.
It's at that point. It's like, you know what? Why not? Let's just keep going. Let's see what other embarrassing things we can pile on as this season just ends up burning into the abyss. So for rip, Tristan Lamar.
I think it's Lemaire. Let's go with he's a Jacques descendant.
Yeah,
let's go with that.
So of course, he's going to be the one to put up 3 goals, doubling his output on the season. And then we get news that Saturday Isaac Posh is starting, and my first response was, why? I don't understand. I didn't get it. To see him even on the line chart on Friday, I was confused that, him making the trip. But him being out, I was like, this team can't score. Like, what is the whole point of, putting him back out there against the number at that time 4 ranked team and one of the best offenses in the country, when you're also down your starting defenseman? Like, I don't know. I just felt it was weird, but happy to see him back, happy to see him playing. And sure enough, we're down, 2-rip by the time I remembered it was a 5:00 start. So it was just one of those things. It's like, all right, it's this is going to be winless in 10 at this point. So needless to say, the Huskies don't end up coming back. Brnovik ends up making it, cutting the lead to 3-1 early in the second, but Western Michigan just a little bit too much, and ended up pulling away there in the second, added an insurance goal to make it an official boat race there in the third. I have told you in the past that I do see this team, Western Michigan, as a team that can make a run for an Natty. I don't know if this weekend against a terrible, as of late Huskies team changes your opinion, but you're definitely on the one saying, no, it's Western Michigan.
Yeah, I guess I guess I would stick with that. Wake me up when you make a run in the tournament. It's certainly going to happen.
To Yale,
right? Well, that's the thing. As long as you're in the tournament, you can make a run. That's what the tournament's all about. It is a series of spins at the roulette wheel. Sure, if they can get in the tournament, and especially as a 1 seed, they have a chance, and they've got the tools. It's that hunch that led me to think that St. Cloud's going to win a game this weekend. It's that same hunch that feels like I don't think Western's going to win the national title this year. So put that with that as many grains of salt as you'd like, because clearly that hunch is not clicking on all cylinders for me. But very good team, and they showed it this weekend. St. Cloud showed that they belong in 8th place too, and this was, I guess I didn't do the Saturday game. They scored 3 minutes and change into the game, buck 19 into the game on Friday night. So about a combined 5 minutes of a tie score this weekend for the Huskies. The other, what is that? 115 minutes. We're all behind. That about sounds right for this weekend. Very uncompetitive. Kind of just, in a sense, or ripping the Band-Aid off. Like, I didn't have to expend any emotional energy this weekend. Because it was just like over immediately. It's like, okay, of course they're going to win.
And there was every once in a while, I would say about 90% of the games that I watch, I do feel that there is like kind of a pivotal moment, or it's like, hey, if this happens, it's completely different, or it's like this converted, so therefore I could rest easy. There's kind of a turning point, or kind of a key play. It's like, okay, this is kind of where the game kind of hinged one way or the other. Absolutely none of that this weekend. And to see the games and just to see Western Michigan kind of at will, and end up just walking over the Huskies. You're completely right as to say, I wasn't emotionally invested. I wasn't like, oh, if only like this thing, we could have been on the other side of it. It was just like, well, that was fun. I can just casually watch this and see where it goes, and wishing I was continuing playing Dark Souls 3 and dying in that over and over again, as dying in that game would have been a little bit less painful than just watching all of the hope that I had throughout, the beginning part of the season. Just remember it fondly, listen to Enya, cry a little bit as this painful season just keeps going on, continues, and slowly to our inevitable death.
And now I feel like we're back to normal because you dropped a video game reference that I don't get. Having to just Google what Dark Souls was. So
Dark Souls.
I'm glad that it's a video game. I thought you're going to a dark place there.
Kind of. Dark Souls, I wouldn't say it's a very optimistic video game. It is But
Well, not
Dark
with that
Souls,
cheery title.
Dark Souls has the reputation of being one of the hardest video games, and you die a lot. It like prides itself on killing you over and over and over again. But it's one of those things that eventually, you'll die 30 times on a boss, but that one time that you beat Ornstein and Smo, and it's just the greatest thing that's ever happened to you, and you're riding that high for the next 3 hours. It's just euphoria. But it's that grind of dying over and over and over again. It's that's what it feels like. And then I'm just resurrected at this bonfire of, all right, let's start another game. Let's start another run. And then I end up watching this team just, murder me over and over again.
Yeah, this is a perfect analogy to this 10 gamer that we're on right now. You can say that if week in, week out, we are burning that Wicker Man bonfire on May Day and dying a slow death week in and week out. 10 games now. And
I feel like every hockey game we watch is like Groundhog Day.
Timely. We just celebrated the holiday.
Yeah.
So yeah, great timing.
So it's just it's like every start of the game I should just play "I've Got You, Babe."
That should be our goal.
Every
song.
Puck drop. That'll be every puck.
Well, it
drop,
can't be our
I've got
goal
you,
song
babe.
because we didn't. We scored once this weekend. So
we scored a goal.
Wouldn't have,
which is something I wanted to bring up because I talked about our lack of offense, and of course I clicked off that stat. But what are we down to? 58th overall in the nation in goals per game. I want to double check that.
Yeah, I'm slow on the uptake here.
But let's see. Yeah, 58th at 2.1. Oh my God, 2.1 goals per game, tied with St. Lawrence. If you want to know who's above us in goals per game, RIT, the aforementioned Yale, Alaska Anchorage, Ferris Effin State, American International for Oxymoron University.
Mercyhurst, the dead last team in pairwise, is scoring more goals than St. Cloud is per game, at least. So, yeah, it's not good, and
we're a little bit better than Miami, so I guess that's what we can get from an offensive standpoint.
And we look back, we couldn't see any. CHN only goes back 20 years on their stat pages, and I highly doubt that there was back in the 80s and 90s, goals were scored at a higher clip. So I can't imagine that there's been a worse offense in St. Cloud's D1 history. We're seeing it now, in action.
I've got to go back then to our preview show. And I remember
all you got to do is go back to the transcript. You don't have to listen to it. A wise man told me that.
Yep, exactly. AI now, just amazing. Mm-hmm. But I remember McMahon and his talks about the Huskies and his season previews about all the teams, and he said, how is this team going to score? And I remember I was just like, what is he talking about? Like, I don't feel like
remember us especially making fun of him saying, didn't he said like he's got the 55th ranked recruiting class coming in this year. We had a big head scratching kind of debate about that, and we felt he was really low on the team. Like, I think because he ranked all the teams 1 to 64 at the beginning of the year, and I think he had St. Cloud 26, 27. And we were laughing, and as it turns out, he was overly optimistic.
Yeah, he was the optimistic one.
And we were even more wrong than he was.
But I don't know how to, because at one point it's like, he's right. So I can give him that, in the end, he is right. I can't say that my logic was that flawed, though, at the time, because I don't think anyone could have predicted how just abysmal Adam Ingram has been.
Yeah. That's the big one.
Like before, we've been talking about how, this injury, and it's like maybe this injury is lingering. Now he's just bad. Like I can't, like, I don't think there's anything other than just that. It just flat out, he is bad right now. We've seen flashes of him, but holy cow, is this season. I don't know what's gotten into him or anything along those lines, but geez, I don't like, anytime he's touched the puck, I feel like the other team has it in a second later.
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously the big one. We've talked a lot about Ingram throughout this season, talking about injuries with this team. And we've been debating this last couple of weeks. Like, where do you pinpoint, or how do you assign the blame? Is it do you just pinpoint it to the Posh injury? Is it the Wiley injury? We've talked about that. With this offense, though, you can't really pin it to injuries, unless you want to pin it to an injury with Ingram, which I would not be shocked if at the end of the season
is Rogers the glue that holds it all together.
Right. Well, your other injuries, yeah, Ryan Rosborough, like, that's addition by subtraction. Jack Rogers, kind of the same. Like, these guys, if you're saying that this offense tanked because of those injuries, I've got some prime real estate in the desert to sell you. Ingram, I wouldn't be shocked if at the end of the year we hear something about, kind of like how NHL teams after the playoffs kind of say, oh yeah, this guy was playing on a broken leg, and this guy was broken hip. I wouldn't be surprised if we hear something that Ingram has been injured this entire season, has been a gamer, and has been playing through that pain, which I tip my cap to some degree, but in another sense, 5-point season to date, and he's missed officially 4 games. You're not helping your cause. If you are injured, or if you're playing at 75%, 5 points is 5 points. Even though let's say Ingram was on a completely average, or let's say to his track, like let's say he was on track for a 30-point season, which we expected this year, you'd still be 2.2, 2.3 goals per game. It's not like Ingram is the key here to getting this offense into average offense territory. There's levels of offense that we're missing, not just pieces, individual players. It seems like this, it's just games at a time or weekends at a time like this one, where you just put in one goal on the weekend. Been too many of these, and I'm not exactly sure. I mean, I know how we got there. You look at our line chart, and we've been mixing those lines around with some frequency over the last, at least during the majority of this free fall. But yeah, when you're cranking out that Ingram or that Selquist, Ports, Thorson line for a month and a half with no success, I can see why this offense has been struggling for the majority of the year, because it's been contained mostly to one line, and that line is whatever line Brnovik's on. For most of the season, it was Brnovik and Hall together. They've been cycling those guys around. It's just not, there's no depth there. There's no depth, and it's not like we're a one-line team. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not like we're containing all of our offense to one line, because even that one line isn't really producing a ton. It's just a bottom 10 offense at this point. There was nothing much to write home about with any of the offensive players on this team. And so it's easy. It's getting easier to understand why this has happened. But again, it's 10 games now, tied for a D1 school program record. It's getting to a point, there was a comment I got on my Twitter feed about the Posh injury. Cause I said, I'll back up here. Let's talk about Posh. Cause you mentioned you didn't think that it was the right opportunity for him to come back.
I don't know about saying it wasn't the right opportunity, but it I don't know. It caught me by surprise, and for a team that can't score throwing him in at that situation, hold off a week. Like the season doesn't hinge on getting a win this weekend.
Yeah, when I saw that he was starting, I certainly was surprised.
I mean, considering we have a bye week coming out.
Yeah, we talked about it last week. It said, be conservative with him. There's no need to rush him back. And so when I saw that he was starting on Saturday...
Race for 7th in the NCHC? Come on.
I would like to see it because that would put a Arizona State playoff series.
You would, yeah.
Because you know what I want to do at this point in my life? See this team in person.
This team again. Oh, yeah.
I don't think you're going to do it at 8th because I don't think Arizona State's going to win the Penrose. But
no, that's Omaha.
It's either they're going for the Penrose this weekend. Omaha's at Western for the lead in the conference standings because everybody had that at the beginning of the year. But so certainly was surprised to see Posh listed as the starter for Saturday. And my first reaction was, well, at least that they think he's healthy to play. So why not? If he's deemed healthy to play, you should start him. And right, we should mention, did not play very well on Friday. Those first 2 goals put you in that hole. And those were not good goals, especially the second goal to give up. Were not good goals to give up. And then as we saw the Saturday game turn pear-shaped pretty quickly, then my second-guessing instinct kind of kicked in. And I'm just like, was it really that he was healthy on Saturday, but he wasn't healthy enough on Friday? The one thing I wouldn't have liked, and again, this is second-guessing, but if you're going to bring Posh back, bring him back on Friday for the first game of the weekend. I think to bring him back on a Saturday after a game that you just got shut out and didn't look very competitive, it reeked of a desperation move, but we're way past desperation. We're like 3 weeks beyond that. You wanted to be desperate. You bring him back for Arizona State on one leg at that point. And there you're desperate. And I would give you a benefit of the doubt that I'm not really giving you in February at a 9-game losing streak at that point.
9 games?
Winless streak. Sorry. But so, and then yes, he doesn't play all that well. I mean, a lot of those goals were not his fault, I'd say. I mean, the defense this week, I remember I've been the last couple of weeks kind of musing about, God, Warren Clark's not as bad as I figure him being benched every game deserves. He was pretty bad. There was on Saturday, I felt like every defenseman I pinpointed as you got burned that time. Like every Bufflin, there was one play that he just got absolutely worked. It's like every defenseman had a play where they just got completely outclassed by a Western player. So the defense didn't do any justice to, or didn't give any help to the goaltenders. Posh was pulled after the second period, we should mention, putting Gray in for the third period garbage time. But so I kind of was like, at least this performance maybe puts a dent into the narrative of this is all based on Posh's injury. Because there were more problems going on than just Posh. Posh was, if anything, covering up the other problems on this team. Mm-hmm. And this might have illustrated that point a little bit. And someone had responded saying, well, what's he get? The Posh injury started it. And once the injury started, there was no way to avoid a kind of collapse like this. But we're at a point now where it's a 10-game winless streak. And this is a length and quantity of a winless streak that's just unheard of. I was looking across the country. There's only been 3 programs this year that have longer winless streaks than St. Cloud's current 10-game winless streak. And those programs that have longer winless streaks are the worst team in pairwise, Mercyhurst, the second worst team in pairwise, Miami, and the 4th worst team in pairwise at Northern Michigan. Miami's at 17 games. That's active. 17 game. It's all losses as well. A couple of overtime losses in there, but no ties to be had. So there's 3 teams, which are 3 of the 4 worst teams in pairwise. Those are the only teams that have 10-game plus losing streaks or winless streaks this year. 10-game winless streaks, you can be a bad team and avoid that. And so we're at a point here where it's beyond this team had some bad breaks with injuries and whatnot. It's just unusual for any team. And especially, I think, with a team that has the talent that St. Cloud does have, to go into a stretch where you literally don't win for 10 games. And so that's what's frustrating to me, is that, yes, there's been some bad breaks going against them, but it doesn't get to this point. It's never gotten to this point except once in St. Cloud's D1 history. And it generally doesn't hit this. It doesn't get to this point when we're talking about any team at the D1 level in any season. This is an outlier of all outliers. So, and again, I don't really fault bringing back Posh, but it seems weird in retrospect, and clearly it seems more weird because it kind of backfired. It was like the worst possible outcome. You bring him back and then you have to pull him 2 periods in. Like, you feel like you really hope that didn't do anything with his confidence level. But yeah, it certainly seems in retrospect that it would have been wiser to hold him off until this CC weekend. Or if he was healthy enough to play and healthy enough to be on the trip, why not throw him in there on Friday? But we are the armchair quarterbacks and we are not the coaches. So yeah, it felt like a weird move. But at the time, I didn't really disagree with it because it's like, hey, it's nice to see him. You know, it's been a while. But then we ran into the train that is the Western Michigan Broncos. So I guess that's a rude welcome, I guess, back to the college game for Isaac Posh.
Yeah, and this Western Michigan team, sitting 25-1, 20 wins, 5 losses, 1 tie officially on the season. So they've definitely taken care of business. Only 1 loss here since the turn of 2025. So it's and that loss was the overtime loss to Colorado College. So, but tale of 2 halves, as the Huskies have averaged 1.8 goals scored since the beginning of January. So, I hate to ask, but do you got a POW this week?
If there is any week that there's a none of the above option, would be this week. If you're going to put a gun to my head, I don't know, Gardner. There was 2 2-on-1s on Friday that Gardner passed on one and then took the shot on the other. They didn't score, obviously, because no one scored on Friday, but they were 2 offensive plays that stuck out that I really can't think of anything else. And like I said, I thought the defense was atrocious this weekend. Why not Damon Gardner?
All right. Go Huskies Woo says Isaac Posh for wanting to come back to this team, which I thought was for willingly coming back. And I felt like that was a really, really strong answer. I'm going to go with Ocean Wallace.
He's making a name for himself, I should say. Really likes taking those penalties.
Yeah. 9 minutes of ice time, 2 penalty minutes, making his presence felt. But it's not a great week for the Huskies. And then we got the bye week coming up, and then Colorado College. There will be no show for me next week, as I actually have to go out traveling. I got to go to New York for work.
You're on assignment.
Oh, sorry. Yes, I got to go on assignment to my job that gets me money. So, so I won't be able to talk too much in previewing Colorado College. So I'll talk a little bit about it right now, as kind of the best I can. But back to the friendly confines of the concrete cathedral, friendly as I guess that it can be. But one of the rare teams that we've beat, as of I'll say recently in loose quotation marks. But it's Colorado College is just kind of an interesting team because it's I do actually feel kind of good this weekend that we're going to get a positive result or next weekend against Colorado College, because I do feel that they are a little bit more streaky, and for some reason I think we can match up against them. So I do like our chances. Their power play statistically not too great, only at 14.8%. But if we're able to take care of some of their big guys, and especially Laba Burkholder has been kind of a thorn for us, but we've had some recent success against them. And I think that we're going to get some good results when we play them.
So do you think the streak's going to end?
Yes.
Friday or Saturday? Are we going to break the all-time D1 streak, meaning going to 11 like Spinal Tap, or is it going to be broken at 10?
I think it's going to be broken at 10. I think Friday we're going to win.
I like that prediction. I'll go the Saturday.
So
I'll go Saturday. The win.
Wait, that cannot be right.
I tweeted it out. 10 games, 10-game losing streak in the first year of D1, 87-88. It was November.
Oh, okay. Huskies all time.
Yeah. What? Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Sir, what did you think I said? Like the entire NCAA history? No.
Yes.
Yeah. Just okay. Husky. Whew. The longest Husky winless streak at the D1 level is at 10. So if they lose on Saturday, or they don't win, then they would extend that streak to an all-time record. If we've made it this far, we might as well break the streak to say that we saw the longest drought
in St.
Cloud history.
Yeah.
I do think that they're going to win on Saturday, though. Yeah, CC's, obviously that's another swing and a miss team from preseason predictions.
Yeah, they were
that's one where McMahon's one of his rare misses this year, because he, like all the other experts, thought that CC was going to be world beaters this year. But it had a good start to the season with a soft schedule non-conference. But once that schedule tightened up, it's been mostly downhill for CC. A drought that makes St. Cloud's look... it looks great in comparison to St. Cloud's. They've dotted some wins sporadically in between a lot of losses since December.
And they got this weekend against Miami.
They got this weekend at home against Miami. If you're impressed with losing streaks, I do think Miami's going to run the table here. They've got at CC. Their two home series are against Denver and Western. Like, good luck. And then they've got CC and Duluth on the road. Duluth they've already been swept against handily at home. This is the only time they'll play CC this year, but Miami's got a real chance. And because they don't make the playoffs, if they go 0-8, they are done for the season. They don't even get to make the playoffs. So
their sole point on the season will be to the Huskies
if they don't take another one of these teams to overtime. Which
that is,
let's see, maybe them happening. Maybe they'll because like last year they're only.
We should have saw the writing on the wall there on November 8th.
We probably should have. You're not wrong. Miami's only because they only had one conference win all of last year, which that was incredible. Like, that had never happened in the NCHC era. And that lone win was against Western Michigan, who ended up making the tournament last year. They were good last year, not as good as they are this year. but they end the season at home against Western, just like what the situation was last year for their lone conference win. Maybe that'll be the one win they have. Who knows? But so CC obviously gonna be favored to sweep that series this weekend. But they split at North Dakota. St. Cloud can't say that. That's what they're coming off of. And then they split a series against Western the week before. 4 splits in a row, actually. We mentioned that comeback win at Arizona State, which kind of came out of nowhere. Big win for them. And then that Western win was in overtime. I had mentioned this last week. They've been cycling in this Carson Musser in net. He's been playing their Saturday games last few weekends and a couple of wins in those games. So Mbarico has been kind of relegated, not really to his fault. I see that Musser was a drafted player himself. This could be like this is kind of those politics that I mentioned that coaches kind of need to play nowadays. Like Mbarico, you'd think 2 years in now with his career and has had a good NCAA career, very well could be a flight risk to the pros. And you've got another guy on roster with Musser who's been drafted. You feel like if he might get some more action next year, that you want to work him in prior to that, get him some experience this year, or because he's a drafted player, you want to have him stick around so you give him some action here. Anyway, you cut it. It might be something what we see one night of Mbarico and one night of Musser in net. Keep an eye on that. But they're a decent team. At this point, they're a better team than St. Cloud is. They're higher in pairwise, and they're above you in the standings in the conference. So you can't take any team other than Miami, and even them you probably need to take seriously. But any team in this conference is going to be licking their chops when they play the Huskies. And any win, as we've seen here in 2025, any win is going to be a dogfight. I think that they're going to finally get off the schneid here, and sounds like you agree, but it ain't going to come easy. That's for sure.
Just interesting looking at Mbarico, talking about him being a flight risk, but his save percentage year after year, freshman year, 925, then 915, and then so far 905. So consistently downward in that.
He was a guy too. I was kind of skeptical coming into his career because his USHL numbers were not very good. But he just got all these like World Junior spots. He was very hyped coming into his NCAA career, and his first taste at NCAA was very good for CC. He's probably better than what those numbers indicate. It's a lot of it has been shouldered on this team. Is kind of when the worm turned for them. I think the defense kind of let him down as well. So it's goalie numbers are they can be an enigma to figure out at sometimes, but good goaltender. And again, I would expect him and Musser to each get starts just because that seems to be what they've been playing in the last, or at least the second half of the season. So we'll be looking forward to that, but a week off in between. We'll have to go Weldie-less next week, but I'm going to have a show. I'm going to fly solo, and I'll put out a tweet for some questions. You can ask me anything. We don't even need to talk about hockey. You can ask me anything you want, and I might answer. So that's going to be the format for next week. Hopefully
I could have a lot of questions.
You can submit one. I'll let you submit just one.
Okay.
Just one question, so make it a good one. But hopefully we'll be recapping some good women's results against the Gophers this weekend. But we've already got the CC preview knocked out 2 weeks in advance, so we'll probably be there'll be some time to ramble on topics that maybe aren't hockey related. So check out that tweet if you want to participate in a solo show for next week. But looking forward to it.
You're like Jason Derulo. You're going to be riding solo.
That is right. Most people actually, when people say which celebrity do I remind them of, Jason Derulo is the number one
I was going to say, that's
answer.
got to be pretty high up on the list.
Duh.
Yeah.
It comes pretty naturally.
Mine, P.D. Pablo, actually. I don't know why. I just keep taking my shirt off, twisting on my head, spinning like a helicopter.
He said that you like those psych callbacks. That was a good callback.
Yep, exactly. That's so anything kind of piqued your interest around college hockey in general? I guess the big CHN released their big edition when we get towards the end of the year.
This time of year.
This time of year, let's cue up the sound effect. Here we go. It's the
CHN Pairwise Probability Matrix.
All right, the probability matrix is in. They crunch the numbers for your Huskies, and our at-large percentage is 0. Shocker.
Actually, it's blank. There's a difference between 0.0 and a blank score.
Ooh.
The blank. So how the matrix works is they do 20,000 simulations of the rest of the schedule, and if none of those 20,000 simulations comes up with St. Cloud making the tournament as an at-large, that's how you get the blank. So it is officially over. Unless there's another combination of results that is above and beyond the 20,000 simulations, which is exceedingly rare, St. Cloud will need to win the NCHC tournament in order to get into the playoffs. And what are the percentages on that? Was it I was 0.08, I think, after the Friday game. I don't know if that went down even more after the Saturday game. But I'm trying to find it. Do you have it in front of you?
Yeah, I got it in front of me. What's listed right now is 0.9.
What number?
0.9.
9?
9.
9 times.
Chance for an automatic
Matrix.
qualifier.
Here we go. All right, now I found it. It would be them to, I swear it was 0.08 or 0.8% on Friday. It would be CHN to have St. Cloud's percentage increase after they lost on Saturday.
But something happened where it bumped our chances, because apparently there's some kind of a chance that we get up to 12. Is that what that's saying? Probably one out of 20,000.
Again, so the 0.0%, if it says that means that there was at least one of those 20,000 simulations that came up with that result. I would assume with St. Cloud's, if they get up to 12, they still would make the tournament, because that means that there would be a bunch of other
probably
crazy stuff going on. If they have nothing listed under the at-large percentage, that means that there was none of those 20,000 simulations came out in their favor as far as making it. Or that probably is if they won the NCHC tournament, they would end up at 12. I think that's what that would mean.
Yeah, probably.
But again, that's under 1% chance of that happening at this point. Bowden really teased us with that tweet, because at that point there was 9 teams he listed that got a red percentage next to their name, which means that's the percentage of the Wisconsin rule taking effect. Meaning Wisconsin rule update. Thank you. And I'm just counting now. We've actually, so 9 was the first number of teams that had the chance of making the tournament with an under 500 record, or of qualifying for an at-large spot, but would have been bounced out due to the Wisconsin rule. As of actually after the Saturday games, we've got 11 teams that have a red percentage after their name. So now the downside there is the highest of these percentages is New Hampshire at 0.5%. So insert the Jim Carrey gif. Sounds like we got a chance of the Wisconsin rule at 0.5%, roughly, with New Hampshire taking the cake. Wisconsin getting swept at home against Penn State. Not great. I really would have liked to seen them make a move on that Wisconsin rule, but the fact that you've got this many teams that even have a chance of moving up, but and being in the pairwise gate, but not having an over 500 record is pretty astounding. It kind of it speaks to at least the Hockey East, how great of a season that conference is having, because most of these teams are from Hockey East or the Big Ten. All of them actually, except Penn State and Wisconsin. Those are the only 2 teams, and Michigan. But the other 8 teams that have a red percentage next to their name right here on the matrix are Hockey East teams. But that doesn't look terribly likely. But we always do like to mark the time of the year when the matrix is unveiled. This year is a bit of a dud for us because the first time that we look and St. Cloud's at such a minuscule number, it takes a bit of the edge off the fun here. But it is always nice to see any surprises or any interesting tidbits that you see on the matrix.
Every time I look at the matrix, I always kind of, especially when the first one comes out, I kind of see where the groupings are. And I find it interesting, and maybe I have to double check to see so many, at essentially, I mean, we've got Boston, we got BU at 10 at 97%.
Which I'm sure they really bumped up in progress here. They won the Bean Pot, and they're up to 6th in pairwise after that win. Bumped them up a couple of spots. So I would imagine
that goes up to 100%.
I mean, close to it, probably like 99 and change.
So, but it's just, it feels kind of interesting just to see that many teams already are a lock, essentially. And then
like
if
BC,
you go down to Mass Lowell at 89%. Now I played Fire Emblem and XCOM, so I know these percentages are a little bit.
It's another gaming reference I don't get.
Dan Jacobson is probably
I know Dan Jacobson
pumping his fist right now. Mm-hmm. But basically, those types of game, they'll have a percentage to hit, and remarkably, if you have an 89% chance to hit, it feels more like a 50-50. you're gonna miss.
So you're saying Lowell fans should be getting a little nervous at that 89%.
Yeah. Well, I would say if it was XCOM, yes, be very nervous at 89%. Here, where real statistics are probably involved, you're probably fine.
It is Woden though. You got to factor that into it. It's math, true. But it's also Woden is kind of the lord of the math. So that there is that factor. But yeah, BC, it seems like BC
of the math.
That's his new nickname.
I like that.
BC is basically, I mean, they're 95% chance to be a 1 seed, the number 1 overall seed. Like they basically locked up a 1 seed, and if not the overall number 1 seed. Michigan State looks to have not locked up a 1 seed as well. Minnesota and Maine obviously have theoretically clinched berths, but it's not, they're not as locked into a 1 seed as BC and Michigan State have. But BC obviously looks to be very solid in their positioning, which means like they don't really have to sweat as far as being anything more than a 1 seed, and they're more than likely going to be the number 1 overall. So interesting to see how locked in they are. But yeah, as you mentioned, that first 11 in the matrix down to Lowell, well, BU at 10, everyone else 97% and up. So that means that UConn, who hasn't been playing, like they haven't won in a couple of weeks here. They haven't won a regulation game in a couple of weeks. Won in overtime on Saturday, but still at 98% to make the tournament. So looking really good for them. But even like Arizona State, 56%. That's not. They still got work to do. So I mean, there's that. The last couple of spots in pairwise, last few at-larges are going to obviously come down to the conference tournaments we're not going to figure out who's going to have those spots locked up, as is normal. That's not terribly out of the ordinary, but it's just interesting. Those are the spots, 10 or 12 to 14, 15-ish, always kind of the bubble spot of the field. And those are the spots you don't feel secure if you're in, but you like being there rather than below that range of the pairwise as well. So fun time of year whenever we get to dust off the matrix sounder. That means that we're getting close to tournament time, which traditionally has been fun around here because that generally means that St. Cloud's going to be involved. But this year will be a little different because we know even when we dust off that matrix sounder, that St. Cloud's probably not going to be there and not going to be involved. But that doesn't mean that we're going to take that time off. You'll still get a preview of the tournament. You'll get a prediction field. I'm 3 for 3 for the men's side. So I got to do one this year to see if I can continue my hot streak. But we'll continue on with those segments. But it is always nice to get the matrix unveiled and see how the action looks there.
And I also kind of like going through where my predictions were and seeing not just obviously St. Cloud State being that far off as I was, but just kind of seeing where some of the other ones, like I was a lot more high on North Dakota, but seeing them as a 0.5% chance to make an at-large. So they're going to have to make a run there in St. Paul to do anything. And I remember, with us even talking about the NCHC and, with how dominant Hockey East and, to an extent also the Big Ten, how many teams that they're putting in. Yeah, it's Western Michigan and Denver are your two that are over that 97% and above. But Arizona State's your next best chance, and that's essentially a coin flip. So it's
you could have two teams from NCHC this year.
Yeah,
that's very possible. I would still think that 3 is going to get in. If it's not Arizona State, it could be another non-Western / Denver team that wins the tournament, for instance. But I think 3 is your max for sure, and it might be 2.
Yeah. That's just a unique position there for the conference that we're sitting in to not be the powerhouse that we have been. A little bit of a down year on the national landscape. And we talked about Omaha as well, fighting for the Penrose, but to see them down at 27 and only a 0.1% chance to make the at-large. It's they were hampered by their non-conference, and that kind of goes to show you how those games really end up biting you. They're going to have to do what they historically have not been able to do and have postseason success for them to make a chance in the tournament.
Did you catch any of those Arizona State Denver games? Very good series.
I did not. I can't 100% remember. I want to say
the Friday game was a CBS game, but the Saturday game, which I was able to watch the end of, lots of goals, 5-4 overtime for win for Denver on Friday, and then 6-5 comeback win. They were down 5-3 about halfway through the third. Arizona State was tied it and then won it in overtime. That's just, those are the kind of games I like. Lots of scoring and good home atmosphere at Arizona State, fun atmosphere, and 2 high-powered offenses going at it. It's thumbs up for me.
Yeah, and what on that Saturday game? What, there were 4 goals scored in like a 3-minute span or something along those lines. So,
yeah, back and forth action, and it was quite the contrast going from the Western Michigan St. Cloud games to those games, because it was like, oh wow, this is it's almost like in the St. Cloud games were going in like half speed, and then he flipped it on that game, and it was at full speed and entertaining to watch, I should say.
The Saturday game against Arizona State, that was 11 goals ago. So if we want to look back at that one game for Denver and Arizona State, equaled as many goals as the Huskies has scored in about 7 games? 1, 2, 3,
yeah, a good 3 weeks at least.
About 7 games. So go team. But
hey, we've got the streak. We're on the bye week. We can't make the streak any worse.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not.
We'll find
right. But then we got the CC, and we've got CC in our crosshairs. We got them right where we want them. I've got a really good feeling about next weekend.
All right. Should we look at some questions?
Let's do that.
All right. First one, Christine. Tom Petty sounder for Free Fallin'. I like the idea. Tom Petty actually does love to sue, or at least the record label does.
I was going to say, he's not doing a whole lot of anything these days because he's dead.
But his label, I mean, he had to give a lot of, or Sam Smith had to give a lot of royalties for his "Stay With Me" song because it sounded like, "Won't Back Down." I think so. I think like 50% of
my take on this. I feel lawyer up. That's my message to Tom Petty's estate. And I think that the key difference there is that Sam Smith is a Grammy-winning musician who's on the radio. We are two schmucks on a podcast that has a listenership in the dozens. So I don't think those lawyers are really going to be poking around our neck of the woods.
If so, it'd be the Streisand effect. I think maybe we could actually
exactly
hire a lawyer by a GoFundMe page, and being like, we're just two schmucks with a podcast, and
that's right. So I would vote for the Free Fall sounder. Okay. I've come to call it the Free Fall.
Jason, we need a sounder. We need a sounder for this and the whiskey of the week. We need 2 sounders from you.
Please, and thank you. What song can we put behind the whiskey of the week sounder?
I assume Toby Keith's Whiskey Girl.
I was going to say, one bourbon, 1 shot, 1 beer.
Oh, a George Thorogood. There you go.
All right, so run with that, Jason Bryant, and get back to us.
Perfect. Sounds good. Better than Toby Keith.
This actually makes me think, do I have to continue the whiskey of the week for next week when I do the solo show?
Yes.
I think I might have to.
That's a real bummer.
Well, I'm gonna spoiler alert. I ain't gonna go to international. I am gonna go to Evan Williams or wherever.
I don't know. They gotta have a local distillery there for
probably.
Arizona?
I haven't had whiskey in my house in a while. I'm more of a brandy guy at this point in my life. I'm more of a seltzer guy, actually, to be completely honest. But I might have to make an exception if I've got to keep this bit going. I am committed to this
people
show.
Are asking for it now. People want to know.
So I'll get some. I can find some. I think I can find some whiskey here. So
they've got whiskey there in Arizona.
I think so.
It's not just wine.
I've heard some things.
Okay. All right, perfect. I wonder if some of the program struggles are due to the current state of the university. Is it possible that we don't have the resources to give the program what it needs to succeed? I don't know if it's that bad from one stretch during mid-season. And it sounds like Larson also is kind of at a loss, or at least he's always going to be pumping out that the guys have the good attitude. I mean, he's a player's coach, so I do wonder if something like this were to happen under Motzko's tenure, how Motzko would react. But I don't know if it's the university, because if they're going to give resources to anything, it definitely is this program. And I think a lot of the resources that they don't have aren't 100% in their control. Like, I mean, like when it comes to like upgrades to the facilities and whatnot, I don't know how much is in their control and which isn't, but I don't know if it's that aspect, if that dire, but if we get to Miami levels over the next couple of years, which I don't think that's going to happen. And we did get a question about transfer portal and recruiting, which I could talk about that a little bit more in depth, but I don't know. I don't think it's that aspect. I don't think it's that bad. I think it's just a bad stretch, and I don't know if Larson is a coach that's gonna, I don't know, jumpstart it and kind of pump it out of it. So I don't know. I'm at a loss when it comes to it as well.
Yeah, it's obviously the resource conversation is one that needs to be had. Because that does play a factor in at least the future of the program. As far as explaining the 10-game drought here, I think that might be straining it a little bit. If it were a resource issue, you'd think that would have been evident through the first half of the season as well as the second half. And you wonder, because I believe they did this with Michigan. I think they've done it the last couple of years. They did it at Miami, their trip to Miami last year, where they'll fly one leg, but then they bus back. So they hire a bus from St. Cloud that drives down solo to wherever they're going, Miami last year or Michigan this year. And then they hang out there, and then they wait until the team's done with their games, and then they bring the team back on the bus to save. I'm sure that saves money, airfare for the entire team, to do it one leg rather than two legs. I'm sure that that's not the case at Minnesota. You're talking about Motzko. I'm sure they have enough money in the coffers to get a round trip flight for their team whenever they need to make a plane trip. You wonder if those kinds of things can build up throughout a season. I'm not sure. Again, it feels like it's a stretch, but existentially as a program, resources are tight, and it's, I think, going to be a problem as we go forward here year after year. You mentioned upgrades to the arena. That kind of is going to be contingent on state funding, which necessitates the legislature and getting money earmarked for that project. It's somewhat in their control, mostly out of their control. That's something that I've felt can have an effect on things like recruiting. But so, there's definitely issues when it comes to St. Cloud kind of being a poverty school at this point. Those are very important issues. But as far as the short term, trying to explain the 10-game drought, I don't see how that's really to blame, but you could chalk it up as far as just a big picture issue, and it's definitely something to be concerned about. And so if you know anybody that's got $1 billion laying around, Christine, let St. Cloud State know, because they could use the money, let's say.
I would say Glenn Taylor, but I believe he went to Mankato, actually.
Well, Minskew's kind of one and the same, right? So
donate to Minskew, Glenn Taylor. You just sold a bunch of the Timberwolves, so you got some extra millions lying around.
Maybe MacGyver can finally get his degree from St. Cloud and then give us all that MacGyver money.
Those residuals
from PAX TV, playing the MacGyver reruns. Maybe we can get that done. Richard Dean Anderson.
Eric, you guys touched on it a little bit last week, but what do you look for when the season gets sideways at this time? I'm interested in what the young guys do and how Posh rebounds from injury. Would love to see Thorson and Ralph start and get more time, and Brnovich continue to rack up points in his rookie year. Yeah, definitely with Ralph, but Clark as well. Like you said, Clark didn't have that great of a weekend, but at this point you want to see progress and learning, and kind of like how there was a tough stretch for the women, and we were waxing poetic about Dale Ross and the big jump that she's made from last year to this year. And hopefully if we get Clark and Ralph some playing time and really get them learning and up to speed about the game, that we're going to see some growth. And at this point, yeah, that's kind of what I'm looking for. Any aspirations of postseason success is just kind of flown out the window. So just some type of an improvement, and just give me some sort of hope for the future that things are going to be okay, as you lightly caress my back as I'm crying fetal in the shower. It is kind of what I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, I said a couple of weeks ago I wouldn't mind, even if Posh comes back, maybe to cycle Gray in. Maybe not doing every weekend do a split. Like one guy gets one game, Posh gets one game, Gray gets the other game. I don't know if you need to be as scientific as that, but I wouldn't be opposed to getting Gray more action. Not that I think he's as good as Posh, or that he gives the team a better chance to win than Posh. But you're bringing Posh back from an injury. And again, the desperation time for the season is long gone. I give Posh both games in the playoff series that you have. Fine. But I wouldn't be opposed to giving Posh a game in each of these three series coming down the stretch. I agree with, we've talked about, give Wallace some action in each game. There's no point in saving Ports' last couple of games in his career and benching Wallace, who we've already ripped the red shirt off this year. Yes, he has not looked impressive, Wallace, I'm talking about, in his 2 games so far, seemingly only taking penalties.
He's been on the score sheet.
That third penalty he took, that was the first of the 3 that didn't necessitate a video review. So I guess we're making some progress with Wallace.
Improvement.
But get him more, play him every game. If that means Ports is benched, or any of these other kind of depth players that could be benched, that's fine by me. Guys like Thiessen, get him some more regular action. Guys with like Ralph, he's already getting regular action. I think he's stepped up in the amount of time he's been getting. Throw him out on a power play or 2. I think he's a guy that might be able to play on the power play or be a quarterback of a power play unit in the future. Maybe get that out of his system now, or at least started. It wouldn't hurt to do something like that. Again, it is different talking about garbage time seasons, college versus pros, because college, you have a finite amount of time with these players. It's different than pros, where you have the luxury of, like baseball, where you have a farm system and you've got guys with multi-year contracts and team control. And with college, you've got guys for 4 years, and nowadays it's not even guaranteed with the portal. So it's not like you can just bench all your veterans and bring up all the guys from AAA like you would in a garbage time situation in MLB. But having one eye towards the future and trying some things that you might feel would be in play for next season, like I'm talking about, like perhaps trying Ralph on a power play situation, just a situation like that, throw it out as an example, might be beneficial to starting that out this year while you have the benefit of it not really mattering all that much. So those kind of innovations. And again, I feel like that Larson, I'll give him credit. Like, we were screaming about do something. And he has been cycling through lines.
That's true.
It's to a point where you can maybe argue it's a little too much. I'm not going to go that far because I like seeing some experimentation and seeing if you can land on some pairings or lines that going forward to next year might become key pieces of this team. So yeah, some experimentation is, I think, a good thing to see at this point in the season, and at least making it interesting to watch because, again, at least we're off the Sahlquist, Ports, and Thorson line. Like, I don't need to see that line ever again. If you're going to give me Sahlquist and Wallace and Ashan on a line, it's at least like, hey, I've never seen this before, and it probably is going to suck, but at least I haven't seen it yet. So these are the kind of things that I can at least get some interest out of.
Yep. Favorite Super Bowl commercial? I don't even really remember a lot of the commercials, and it's kind of interesting because I saw I think it was on TikTok, someone kind of made the point that you don't really remember it because the funny ones, like, they're just because it takes a human element, and so many ideas are now generated from AI, which can't grasp humor. And I think there is something to that. So it's like, what if Seal was a seal singing about Baja Blast? So it was just kind of like, I'm kind of a little bit lazy in a sense. But probably the best one, and I don't even know if it was actually in the a Super Bowl, but it was, I did kind of get a kick out of the Dunkin' Donuts one with Ben Affleck, but there was one with Jason Mewes and Kevin Smith. So Jay and Silent Bob, and they were getting autographs. And Ben Affleck was like, we've done like 6 movies together. You want my autograph? I just kind of laughed at that, but I really wanted Jason Mewes to just say, you were the bomb in Phantoms, yo. Which would have been a callback to Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. But
you like the callbacks.
I love it. I'm a sucker for a callback. But that didn't happen. But yeah, that's I don't know. Nothing else kind of really struck my fancy of, that was a great Super Bowl commercial.
I'll go with all of those. I'm just looking here. So it was the Patriots against the Seahawks. That was the Super Bowl in 2015. That's the last Super Bowl that I've watched.
Oh, wow. You just...
And I'm not even like trying at this point. Like I realized after the game that it was the Super Bowl. I don't follow the NFL anymore, so I don't even know any of the players. So it's something. It's like NBA too is this way. As I've grown older, I've just consolidated my interests, and football and basketball at some point, at least the NBA, has sort of fallen by the wayside. And you can say the same. I mean, baseball, I follow a lot less than I used to. College hockey is really the main one for me at this point. Like I've mentioned in this show, I barely follow the NHL up until the playoff time. I'm like a lapsed NHL fan, like playoffs only at this point. I always say that, I should watch some games. Let's watch a game. During college hockey season, I'm much more apt to watch a college game than an NHL game. And I just don't have a ton of free time to watch NHL during the week. So I don't know. I don't have anything against the Super Bowl. It's not something that's top of mind at this point.
Oh, so I did not watch it. My wife made a gorgeous spread of food and made a pizza from scratch in the cast iron.
Like a deep dish?
Yeah, a deep dish.
Really?
Proofed it, and it was tried to recreate the old Chicago.
Proofed it? What is she, an editor? Did she edit the pizza? Get it? Proofed?
Oh.
That's like me with your video game references. You don't get the editing references. But
got it. Like
if in the editing process they proofread it and they call it proofing. So yeah.
For some reason, when I thought of proof, I thought like science and when like a scientific, like a proof. or
You could do it that way
math,
too.
kind of. But that's also because I'm reading Project Hail Mary right now, which is there's a lot of science-y in that book about a guy stranded in space trying to save Earth. So that's where my mind went is the science, probably because I'm reading that book, which is also a very good book so far. I'm about
It's laying out there
40%.
too. We're talking about proof, and none of us have brought up like alcohol proof, like whiskey.
Oh, I thought you were
going to
go with pudding.
Duh.
Like the proof is in the pudding. But
no, whiskey.
No,
I'm talking about booze, Travis.
Ah, that's right. I don't drink. There are lessons to be learned from adversity. Hopefully these lessons are being learned. I agree. That's a good point. Dan Jacobson, can Bernovic transfer to UMD?
No.
Neil did add in, I'm worried about him transferring. Could be
Big
Big Ten.
To Duluth, though. Yeah, okay.
No.
Neil's got me here.
Yeah, could be Big Ten or Denver or something like that. And then go Huskies. Woo. David Carl is known for being a poacher. So poaching Bernovic under Larson's nose at the World Juniors. But I mean, that's Bernovic's last win. So I guess that's maybe it's like David Carl was the reason why we're winning. I don't know. For some reason, I'm not too concerned about transfer portal or a lot transferring. First and foremost, like, who am I worried about transferring? It's Bernovic. Everyone else, like, there's a couple.
How worried are you?
Bernovic transferring?
Bernovic, yes,
5%. I just think that
I put it higher than that, but still low, like 15-20%.
Sure. But I also think that Larson overall is a really good players coach, and maybe to a fault. Maybe like he's not ripping into people, but I don't see if that's his real MO. So I think even though they're going through this stretch and people are losing and no one likes to lose, I still think he's a good coach to play for from a player side. I still think that that's going to be the case, and I think it's still going to be. I'm just not too concerned about it for some reason.
Yeah, it would. I mean, it wasn't even a thought of mine. It didn't come across my mind that we would have any of these like high-profile transfer losses in the first half of the season. And obviously, since the second half has unfolded, shall we say, that thought has crept into my mind. I would still be, let's put it this, I would be surprised. I would be surprised that Bernovic left. Although I wouldn't be shocked. 2 months ago, I would have been shocked. But I still would be surprised if he left. But this is the first offseason. I mentioned this before, maybe last week or the week before. First offseason where you're coming off a bad season. A losing record by several games season. A season where you've had garbage time to play, a string to play out. And we haven't seen that in the Larson era or in the Motzko era for that matter. Well, certainly in the era of the portal, we haven't seen a St. Cloud performance like this. So anything's on the table for me. That's why I'm not shocked. I wouldn't be shocked if we have any sort of big losses. I still would be surprised because his track record to date in the transfer portal era has been, he's been able to retain most of the guys here. The losses that they've gotten from the portal have been very low wattage losses. Thomas Rocco, Caleb Thiessen, who didn't find any takers in the portal over the offseason. Dominic Bassi. I mean, the wattage of these moves is flickering in the light bulb. If you can indulge my analogy. So, but these were all players who were coming off successful Husky teams. So it's just an unknown variable here as far as what the how the losses are going to be coming off a season like the one that we've we're currently experiencing. So it is an unknown, which does make me doubt it, get me a little worried, but still, it would be surprising if a guy like Brnovik were to leave for another team or even to the pros, but it would still surprise me, but it wouldn't shock me.
It does kind of make me wonder kind of what the temperature of the room is, though, when you're going through these types of stretches. Like if I show up to the women's hockey game there on Saturday, says I, support women's hockey, this team actually wins. Kind of what reaction that would get if any of the men's players see that.
You're gonna put that on a sign?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. That'll be on the other side of Abby Murphy as a diver. That'll be both of my side.
The Murph the Smurf trolling sign.
Yep, exactly. So, but I think there's a lot of panic and unknown when it comes to the portal, and that I understand. But it's we'll see how everything goes.
Well, because Jacobson brings it up, he's got to have Isaac Howard on the back of his mind there when he's making that tweet.
Yeah,
he's probably more joking than anything. This is a bit. It's Dan Jacobson group therapy session right now, but it's a similar situation where it's different because Howard's season in Duluth was a bad one. He didn't have the season that even Burnvik's putting up for St. Cloud. But that was the first Duluth down year in a while. And he skedaddles to Michigan State to great success. He might win the Hobie this year, which would be great for Dan Jacobs' mental health. But it's a similar situation in that Brnovik, again, might be looking around St. Cloud and saying, these aren't the lilies and roses that I thought I was coming into here based on the St. Cloud track record. So in that regard, it might be similar, but let's hope. And it would, like you said about Larson and the temperature of the room. Yeah, we'll be able to figure out whatever he's talking with the coaches show and all of his kind of pressers about everything's, the rooms. We still got the room. We'll see if that bears out or if it's just hot air.
I will say that maybe it's tinfoil hat time, but his coach's show has been a little bit more of the assistants joining.
I have seen that.
All right. I want to make sure it wasn't just me.
I don't listen to it. The only one I've listened to this year was the Enga one after the UND series, which was an embarrassment. But I did see that Larson was on it, I think, last week.
Yeah, Larson was on it last week, but I think this week, it just got done recording, but I think Inga was on this one as well.
And again, I'm not going to, it is a literal propaganda show. I'm not going to fault the guy for ducking his propaganda assignment for the week. It maybe isn't the best look. I don't know what his track record was when things were going well. If he was ducking the coach's show with this amount of frequency when he was making the tournament, for instance. So I have nothing to base it against. But yeah, it's not the best look.
Rudd or Rude, whichever. I've heard it both ways. So not.
I think it's
Inca.
He was a very nice guy. He's not rude, but he's a nice Rude.
Unlike Rick, who, although ravishing, he was kind of a heel. He was kind of mean.
Good old Ricky Rude.
So, a couple things quickly I wanted to point out in regard to the transfer portal and Brnovik. It was Howard's bad season. And then now he's finding success on another team. Maybe it's the players that he's with, but Brnovik is putting up the points. And he is a kind of a force here on this Huskies team. So, it could be kind of a wide receiver type dynamic too, is like, hey, I'm still getting the points and I'm still putting it up things, I'm still developing. But, I hate to put this on the other foot, but, when he was at the World Juniors, he was held without a point. So I don't know how much the grass is going to be on the greener if he does go to some other place. Now I don't think he's going to be thinking about that. He just wants to win. And maybe if he feels that that's not going to be the case here, maybe it does, but I'm still not too concerned that that's going to be the case. Now, if I'm looking at someone like Adam Ingram, that's going to be kind of an interesting one where he does end up hopping into the transfer portal, change of scenery, and he puts up a 40-point season somewhere else. That's when I can find out some questions. But like if he goes on a stretch, if he does transfer, the next season he gets in a stretch where 10 points in the first 2 series or something like that, I'll be having some questions. So,
yeah, I'm just thinking too. So he leaves. I mean, he had a 17-point season for Duluth. Howard did, which, I mean, it's not terrible in retrospect. I mean, it's certainly not what you expect from a first-round draft pick, which he was coming into that.
And what
season.
was it? What was he drafted?
He was like the last pick of the first round by Tampa.
Oh, was okay.
Coming into that season, he would have been drafted in the summer of 22. And then, but he got off to a really bad start too. Like most of those points, I think, were in the second half of that season. But then he transferred to Michigan State, which, they're obviously really good this year. Like we mentioned, they're pretty much locked into a 1 seed in the tournament this year. But the year that so that 22-23 season, Michigan State was just 500 that year. But that's where that Nightingale, that was his first season. And I believe he coached Howard at the NTDP prior to him going to Duluth. So I think that was the big connection there. So he wanted to transfer to play for his junior coach. It's not like he was transferring to a juggernaut in Michigan State. In fact, Howard's part of the reason they're a juggernaut. They really weren't when he transferred there. So it's not like it'd be different if Brnovik were to go to Denver, for instance, where he's going to a powerhouse team. It might be that I'm wondering exactly what his thought process would be. And it might be that he's not even thinking about it at all. That he's happy here. That's what I hope. I mean, imagine if Brnovik left. Like if we're weeping in the shower, as you put it, about this 58th ranked offense, and then you lose Brnovik over the offseason, there'll be some sadness to be had. So let's hope that he isn't thinking about this at all, and we are just indulging in crazy talk. But I don't know. It's a possibility. The portal puts a factor out there that keeps guys honest, and it also keeps us unsure of the future as well. So keep an eye on it.
And last question, Zamora, what's the goal for the rest of the season? Make St. Paul, try to win the auto bid, or don't embarrass the program too much that it kills recruiting? I mean, anytime you can make a run, I'd be thrilled if this team makes it to St. Paul, especially if it's going to be my last year there.
You're going anyway.
Oh yeah, going anyway. But like to see if St. Paul is Omaha, Denver, Western Michigan, and CC, like that would just be,
that would be the worst from their perspective. It would be the worst possible. Well, Miami, but they're not even a possibility. But that would be like their four worst possible scenario teams.
Yeah. And then,
from an attendance standpoint.
And then that would be the epitome of, well, no wonder why this isn't model isn't sustainable anymore.
The 2,000 fans for the title game. It's like, why didn't we kill this a year early? But yeah, I mean, all those things that Eric said there, you can do all of those things. Try to make the tournament. St. Paul. What were the other ones? Be a tough out.
Don't embarrass the program too much that it kills recruiting.
Yeah, you can do that in the attempt to trying to make St. Paul and getting the auto bid. You should be doing that either way. I'm not. Yeah, obviously, what I was trying to put out there as far as trying to experiment with guys and maybe putting Gray out there for a couple of games, even if you think Posh is healthy. Like, you're not sacrificing your effort by doing that. You're not embarrassing yourself. You're not making a mockery of the game, I would hope. I don't expect this team to pack it in from an effort standpoint. Even this past weekend, which was a pretty embarrassing weekend, I didn't see any sort of like lack of effort per se. So yeah, obviously you don't want to put anything that endangers, like Eric said, recruiting standpoint, reputation like that, having St. Cloud being a place to play, being a desirable location for recruits. You don't want to do anything to tamper with that, because that's the most like capital you have. We're talking about a program that's short on some resources. Perhaps the biggest resource you have is the reputation of the program. It's kind of like St. Cloud's like a hockey school. At least athletically, that's what it is. I mean, academically, they've got some programs that regionally have some repute. But from a sports standpoint, hockey is what puts you on the map. And so you think that you don't want to damage that, as far as this is a school where all the eggs are put in that basket athletically.
But as far as athletic achievements goes, I mean, obviously wrestling far and away.
Sure. Obviously. I mean,
but as far as the revenue.
Well, and then just also the D1 to D2 aspect, obviously, with the sport being the only D1 sport being hockey.
And that's the big thing. But I do also want to give a shout out to the dance line and the dance team.
That's right.
For just continuing to win. I mean, they were winning also when I was in college too. So cheerleading.
Yeah, I didn't mean to slight the other sports. It's just
no, but you're right. But you're right. As far as puts you on the map, and even this is being a niche sport where St. Cloud, even on ESPN, still needs MINN behind it.
Right.
But yeah, with it being D1, it does put a little bit extra on it. That's for sure.
Yeah, I've talked to people in this state, and the only reason they've ever heard of St. Cloud is through hockey.
You guys lost AIC, right?
Lost to those wasps, the wasps, right?
The bees, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Well, that about does it on this episode. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Weldie at More Clappers, MOAR, More Clappers. Andrew, you can find him at
Andrew, SCSUHHP, Mosey for Hobie on Twitter. You can email the show, Huskies Hockey Podcast at gmail.com. Again, I'll be flying solo next week. If you're not on Twitter, send me an email with a question. Anything goes. You can ask me anything. Doesn't need to be hockey related.
Especially if it's about the hit Broadway production of Anything Goes.
There you go.
So
not sure if that's a bit.
Including Anything Goes.
Is there an actual Broadway show called Anything Goes?
Yeah, I think that's what Sutton Foster won her Tony for.
Of course. Like, I don't know how I forgot that. Big fan of Sutton. I always have been. And so, yes, if you do submit a question about the Broadway career of Sutton Foster, I probably won't have a ton to expound on. But I will give it my best shot. So email the show, or you can tweet me, and then I will get to your questions. Hopefully we won't go for 2 hours next week, but we'll see.
Okay. Maybe a little bit of a caveat. Sutton Foster did win the Tony for the revival of Anything Goes in 2011. Patti LuPone was nominated for Best Performance by Leading Actress in a Musical in the original run in 87. But she actually ended up losing. And that was kind of famously as well. So,
well, I didn't know that it was Cole Porter songs. I probably would like that.
it's very good. And
Yeah, so the original show was 34. The 87 was a revival, and then they revived it again, you're saying, in 2011.
correct. But in the 87, they didn't have the split between revivals and new musicals at that time. So it was one category. Now they've got it to split as the Tony goes to best in a new musical and best in a revival.
Put some Cole Porter. I think Cole Porter songs are in the public domain. We don't even need to worry about the Cole Porter faction of lawyers that could come at us with the DMCA complaint. I wouldn't be opposed to bumping out with some Porter.
Okay, I can see what we can
maybe work on that. We can workshop that in the future.
Yeah. But Joanna Gleason won in beat out Patti LuPone, and
you know who she was married to? Joanna Gleason.
I do not.
Paul Gleason, who was the principal in Breakfast Club.
Oh,
now you know.
Look at that. And who is Joanna Gleason's father?
Jackie, of course.
Monty Hall.
Is it really? It's not
Straight
Jackie
up.
Gleason.
No. Monty Hall. Monty Hall and Marilyn Hall. Mother and father.
Oh, that's good.
Monty Hall, the original host of Let's Make a Deal. And has a famous Monty Hall problem. If you want to go back to maths and proofs, the Monty Hall problem was whether or not you should switch doors.
Right.
Which, but anyway, Joanna Gleason won for Into the Woods, and don't get me started on Sondheim.
You're not a Sondheim.
I'm not a Sondheim. Like, I don't like. Okay, here's my issue. I hope we don't go 2 hours long. Your podcast next week is going to be, depending on what questions you. Anyway, like I don't like how Sondheim's phrases go on like an extra 2 measures, or it's like, you know, there's a certain cadence when it comes to songs, but his like kind of stretches it out a little bit to be like a little bit different, and his syncopation is a little bit different, and then it's just like it's annoying to me, and I'm just like it doesn't flow very well in my ears. And I know people love Into the Woods or Sweeney Todd or whatnot, and I'm just not a fan. No, thank you.
Yeah,
although except Into the Woods, Agony, hilarious song. Absolutely love it. But
I don't have firsthand knowledge of Sondheim. I wrote a puzzle because he wrote a fair amount of cryptic crosswords way like before he was really even famous as a Broadway lyricist, musician, whatnot. And so he has a history in crosswords. And so when he died, I wrote a cryptic crossword that was tribute to Sondheim. All of the cross clues referenced one of his musicals. So I can list many of his musicals, most of them, in fact. But I haven't really watched them. Very little knowledge of them. Like I've never even seen West Side Story, the film version. And yeah, I'm not a huge musical fan. I'm watching these movies in the early 70s, lots of musicals in that time period.
Sure.
And it's just not a genre that I really get transfixed with. But it is nice because there are a fair amount of well-known ones in this time period that, like I mentioned, Fiddler on the Roof, which I had not seen until the last couple of years. It's good to scratch that one. And that one's one of the better ones, the ones that I've enjoyed. But then you've also got ones like 1776, which a lot of people like is sort of like a pre-Hamilton musical. Jesus Christ Superstar. There's some big ones. Cabaret, which I do like. Again, I like the ones where like Cabaret is a good example where the music is part of the plot. There's something about the breaking into song and sort of breaking the fourth wall.
Sure.
It just loses me. But if it's kind of incorporated into the plot, then I feel like I'm more engaged with those kind of musicals. But I've still got a bunch left to pick off the list here, so I'll keep you apprised of all the ones that I've got to watch here for my project.
Sounds good. I do want to quickly some clarification. When I said that Sutton Foster won her Tony for Anything Goes, yes, that was true, but I don't want to say that that was her only Tony Award winning, as she did win in for Thoroughly Modern Millie back in early aughts. 01, 02, somewhere in there. 01 was producer, so probably 02.
Well, we would.
So.
Yeah, I'm glad that we don't have to take a segment later to do a correction.
Exactly. I want to make sure I nip that right now to say, hey, by the way, kudos to Sutton Foster.
We may go 2 hours plus on a show, but we do not leave you hanging with Sutton Foster misinformation. So.
Gonna make sure. Gonna make sure to help you.
That's right.
But until next time, go Huskies. Woo!